What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are finally breaking down the top running backs in the 2025 NFL Draft. This is going to be 21 of the top running backs because we are going to be doing a deep dive over the offseason as we finally see all the declarations, who's going back to school. So I'm waiting on that because we're also getting more All-22 tape because all these players are exclusively graded in All-22. So I got to give a couple shout outs to some dudes before the video starts. Kyle Monangai. I want some Rutgers offensive tape, but we got the majority of the guys on here, and of course, we're going to be filling out the rest of the dudes as the offseason goes on. My goal is honestly to get to probably 500, maybe more people on my big board, so super excited for that. Let's get into this, though. If you are new, again, like, comment, subscribe, join the show. We like to do stuff like this all the time. I'm debating on whether offensive tackles or receivers are next because I've been updating some of the guys already, but that's a conversation for another day. When talking about running backs, I think it's key for you guys to understand how I end up grading these players. So, obviously, you got this basic stuff, height, weight, like where I think they're going to go, what the grade is. So, my grade kind of shows what I think they should be in terms of like where they should go. Projection is basically where I think they will go. And then, we'll just go from there. But regardless, it's going to be out of 100, but there's also going to be separate tiers because I think that, you could see a number 82 out of 100 and you could be like, what am I supposed to think of that? And I want to be able to contextualize it for you. 80 and above is going to be RB1 territory. This is a 3-down back, doesn't necessarily need any sort of compliment in the running back room. So someone who is truly uniquely a blue chip talent. RB1/2 essentially means a starting quality running back, whether you're in part of a duo or, on a team that maybe the standard's a little lower, maybe the value of running back's a little bit lower. You could have them as an RB1. That's going to be 75 to 80. So again, you'll be seeing that in this. And then you got the guys who are pretty much RB2s, RB3s, guys who are going to be getting reps via a committee. That's going to be 70 to about 75, that next tier. And then tier 4 and below, those are going to be more your developmental guys. I think I might have extended RBBC all the way down to 64, but regardless, it's going to be that next group. And then developmental guys are below that. Actually, I take that back. Developmental is 70 to 64. And then I actually have a tier technically below that in practice squad, which is going to be even lower. But also, don't take dream fits too seriously. I like to put that there based on where these guys are going to be picked. Teams I think should be picking in that range. But also, maybe a team like, let's just say the Steelers, you want to refill a Warren type. You could end up doing it with this type of guy because we might be picking Warren's replacement at this point. Don't take it too seriously. It's there more for contextualization and for fun, but also how I actually grade the player. So I look at vision. Basically, do you choose the right hole at the right time? This is why All-22 tape is super duper key because I get to slow it down to the frame and be able to choose myself saying, hey, which hole do I think you should go through? And then watch to see if their mind process is the same way. It's a quality control thing that I personally like to put on myself, and I think you guys appreciate as well. I wish more people did that, but as long as I can do my part, that's all I care about. Missed tackles forced. So this is not remotely a category that is based on the actual statistic because I think that a lot of college defenders are kind of crap at tackling. I want to be able to look at the quality of you being able to break tackles, whether that's through power, whether that's through being elusive, hurdling dudes, being able to juke them. I don't give a shit. As long as you can do your job and make people miss, cool. I think that's something that I really care about. It's a very highly weighted category. Agility, change of direction is actually what I call it on my own, but agility is pretty self-explanatory as well. Essentially, are you able to change directions fluidly? Are you a fluid mover? A lot of guys are very stiff. Running backs are more of a fluid position, which is why I also kind of knock them in scoring. It's kind of easy to score well as a running back, but I'll leave that aside. Receiving as well. This is a low scoring category. I don't really think receiving ability is a massive factor for these running backs anymore. They're not a massive part of the receiving game the way I think. I think that primarily running backs have a very limited role as a receiver in an offense. And so you don't necessarily need to be a great receiver, but it's also good for us to understand, can you play a little bit of a receiver role? If I ended up weighting this as like an actual 10% category out of 100, then I do think that that was where I was having the Trevor Etienne's take like a massive leap at the start of the year, whereas it didn't really respect the true role of a running back. I do have different categories, which in the offseason I'll be releasing those as well, where the best receiving backs, the best third down backs, like the guys who can end up pass protecting, the best overall backs is this. So I do have different roles, and we'll be rolling those out as time goes on. Continuing on though, long speed, self-explanatory. If you're going down in a straight line, is somebody catching you from behind? Burst, acceleration. Are you going to be able to hit the hole and then be able to just explode into your cut? Or are you more so just that dude? There's some guys with long speed that just cannot get that acceleration. They're like Derrick Henry out there, where they're just a straight line beast. Doesn't mean you're bad, but it might mean that you have a more limited role than if you're trying to take over for somebody like Saquon Barkley. That's going to be a little bit more explosive. Then you got contact balance, super duper key, which is why we all love contact balance. You see guys like Ashton Genty, Cam Scatabo, spoiler alert, guys who can bounce off a lot of tackles. That's contact balance. If a guy wraps you up and you're going down, do you still get that extra yard? That is what matters to me. If you just crumble upon contact, not necessarily going to be super valuable if it's 3rd and 1 and you cannot push for that one. Fumbling is relatively straightforward category. I have I think a C grade is about 1 fumble per 100 touches. I know there's a lot more contextualization to that, but at the end of the day, a fumble is a fumble. And over your whole entire career, let's just say for Ashton Genty, like last year, 5 fumbles, was not looking too good. But you look at the context of those are second effort fumbles. We see this year, 1 fumble this year. So it's like, okay, he had a very large workload this year and still only fumbled once. That's not 5 and then 5. So you can understand that, hey, that's not the standard. This is probably closer to the norm. Blocking, I think that it's a very key factor. I actually ended up boosting its weight and taking it from receiving. That is the Trevor Etienne effect. But I do think that there is certainly a role for running backs to pass protect and then, chip, do all that. It factor is the checks and balances. Guys with really small bodies, not necessarily going to be looked at the same way as like maybe some other players. Dudes not running their routes with some effort, I can knock them down for that. So let's get into this. Let's have a great time. And we have 21 guys to get through. Starting out with someone I'm not very excited to give this kind of grade. Someone who I was very excited to give a solid score because you guys know my affinity for Kansas State. It is DJ Giddens. And I'm going to be obviously reading a scouting report from a particular game for every single one of these players. And, I'm going to read maybe 2 for a couple of them as well for you, just so you guys get a little bit of context. DJ Giddens is one of them because I ended up watching Iowa State and then not loving him. And then I ended up also wanting to see a plethora of games. Of course, I watch these guys for multiple games, but I wanted to also, which I rarely do, watch a very good game of theirs because I think that one of the beautiful things is when you watch a player play poor, their worst performance, if they are good players, they will still show you glimpses of excellence. And, in their best performances, they're obviously going to do well. But for players that are not good, even in their best performances, they do not really show you the excitement that you are looking for. DJ Giddens was one of those. So let's just talk about the 2 games here, Iowa State, then Colorado. Starting out with Iowa State, and this is designed for me. This is not like some beautifully thought out anything. This is as if you're sitting down next to me and you're watching the game. This is what I'm saying from what I'm watching. So I ended up saying that his first major loss is having a big amount of aura that is lost when you wear a number 31. It's just not a good number. And then unfortunately, it just went down from there. Not overly twitchy. Horrible athlete, if this is what the athletic capabilities are. My goodness. He has a deer in headlights rep where he ended up cutting back into 4 defenders with 1 blocker. I remember it was this particular outside zone to the left, and everybody was just moving, and then he decides, there's this gap right here. He decides to cut back. The thing is, there were 4 dudes here, and there was 1 bum-ass tight end trying to do some, and it's just brother, you have a massive mismatch with all your linemen over there. So instantly, not a fan of his vision off of that rep. And again, whenever you see the term deer in headlights, IQ is probably going to be affected. And for running backs, the vision is the IQ. This guy looks lost on a football field. I feel bad for him. The worst vision I have seen by far this year, might be the worst running back I have ever studied. I can't even bear to watch these reps. Oh my Lord. So I was like, you know what? This literally is going to be like someone who gets close to a 0 grade. Nearly impossible to do. But then I'm like, well, he got 180 yards and multiple touchdowns versus Colorado. Let's see if maybe he was just having a bad game, maybe he had like a tweaked hammy or something, like someone was up versus Iowa State. Right off the game, I said, or right out the game, I'm like, bro ate this game. Why does he still suck? He is still ass. Even his good plays are not good. I'm praying to God I'm wrong. I hate hating football players because good football is so much more enjoyable to watch than, like this is the worst part of the job when you end up getting excited for somebody and then they're absolute ass. Like praying that I'm wrong. And I just realized I ended up putting a McDonald's logo as a dream fit. Oh, I'm disrespectful. But this dude ended up doing a really good job this year. I think he's top 100 on, he might be top 150 on Trevor Sikkema's board, but he is the lowest graded player of the entire year and ever. But that's probably because I'm more deep into the class this year than any other year. So just not great. The thing is, he just doesn't fumble. That's cool. But, these are legitimate notes where I'm watching and I'm like, the hell's going on? So let's get off of this. Let's get a little bit more excited where we take a massive jump to Jarquez Hunter. And I like Jarquez Hunter, even though the grade doesn't really say. There's certain things I don't like about him. We'll get to it, but C grade's adequate. So apart from vision and agility, I think he's relatively close to being adequate in the majority of categories. So again, if you want to take a late flyer on him, I think that's actually a relatively, like 63 is right there at that fringe between a backup and a practice squad guy. I think that's okay. But let's talk about his game versus Alabama. This is a good chunk of notes because I really wanted to watch this player and take some in-depth notes on him. It was also his most recent game. So he started off showing some nice contact balance early on. He did not recognize a formation shift, and then he ended up having to be yelled at by the quarterback to adjust pre-snap. So they ended up adjusting the play. He ended up not actually processing that he was supposed to move. Something I just end up noting. It's not a big deal. Like some guys just are like so focused on the rep they're about to have that, they don't really process what's going on around him. He initially does not feel confident as a receiver. He was wide open and did some half-assed call for the ball and made no effort to get the QB's attention. I remember this. He did this the entire game and it pissed me off so much. And it's surprising. He redeemed himself to get a C in receiving grade. But he'd do this. He would do a little curl. Like he'd drop out of the backfield, do a little curl, and he's like this. Like, sir, can I please have the ball? Like, what the fuck is that? And so I was just like, oh my God. And then he wouldn't like make an effort to be like, yo, give me the ball. I am wide open. So that was something that bothered me out the gate. You're going to see that pop up again. He had a big run that ended up being more so by luck rather than by skill. He ran into the back of his offensive lineman and then stumbled into an open area and took it for 20 plus. He's not necessarily explosive. He ended up having a solid pass blocking rep. I said, being so for real, he looks like a wuss when it comes to receivers. Zero emphasis on getting open and zero emphasis on getting the ball. Remember, this is at the start of the game, and I'm like watching it. These are my live reactions, but this was something that I kept seeing him do. He did the little like, sir, give me the ball. Like, dude, like, come on, have some emphasis. And I said, I'll give him credit as a blocker. He looks like he knows his shit. Good patience while moving forward to have the block develop and end up having a bigger gain. He chose the wrong hole and on a particular pull block. So offensive lineman pull blocked. I remember this. He ended up like cutting up rather than actually following the block. I don't know what's up with that. He just ended up making a poor decision there. Hence why vision is a grade that it is. He seems to have gained a pair in the receiving game. See, I told you, he redeemed himself, but not by much. He got leveled by Malachi Corley on a hospital ball. I ended up saying Campbell is popping off big time. I'm forgetting who, Jihad Campbell. Yeah, this is before I ended up watching Jihad Campbell, by the way, and I was like, ooh. But regardless, let's get back to it. Actually had a nice route on Jihad Campbell. Good goal line vision for a touchdown. Blocking is worse as the game went on, and he ended up throwing an interception himself. But again, there were like some very promising aspects of Jarquez Hunter. And again, if he just didn't do that, so please give me the ball, like I think I would have graded him even higher. And he's like legitimately there is that potential there for him to be even better. Dylan Samson's next, and people have this guy as like a top 75, even upwards of top 50 pick. And I love Tennessee. Y'all know I love Tennessee. I like Dante Thornton in my top 30 wide receivers when the dude had like 100 yards a year before. Like, y'all know I am a sucker for him. But let's talk about his game versus Alabama this year. He started off with a solid pass protection rep. Good job adjusting his course for a failed defensive line block. So basically, the offensive line did not block the defensive line correctly. He adjusted properly. He's doing a nice job in pass protection overall. He had a fumble while trying to truck a defensive back. It was a good hit. It was a good hit by Malachi Corley, I believe. He tries to bounce outside a lot, and that's something that I did realize with him. He bounces outside when he shouldn't. That's one of the things that irritates me about Dylan Samson. He's one of those dudes, and Tennessee's offense, Heupel, I'm sure, encourages this. They just love to be able to just get the home run hits, and I'm like, dude, you don't need to do that every damn rep. Regardless, he has not done great with his vision overall. He did end up actually doing a bounce outside for a big gain. I feel like he lacks missed tackle force ability. He ended up having a drop in the receiving game. He's not stiff by any means, but the change of direction is not at the same level some other guys that are later on this list did have. Some quick notes from my Georgia game as well. Might as well give you a 2-for-1. He ended up starting out the game with a drop. The yards per carry is heavily weighted on these home run touchdowns. He juked a defender, but was more of a poor tackle attempt than a good missed tackle force. I think the big thing with Dylan Samson is that he's a yards per carry merchant based off of big runs. It's not a consistent type of carry kind of guy. And so I do have my issues with that. But speed, burst, balance, and blocking, that's a very, very solid group of skills to have that is above average. And so it's crazy. At running back 19, I'm still talking about this dude as being worth being on a roster. Like, this is before we grade even more guys who I think might even be above him. That's how good this running back class is, to where Dylan Samson, RB19, still has a lot of really solid traits. But the drops definitely concern me with Dylan Samson. There's some areas that he definitely can improve on. Nick Singleton's next. And this is going to be a super hot one. I didn't really have very many notes for him because I was more so updating it than anything. But he honestly just underwhelms me, and I'm hoping I'm wrong about this. I'm probably going to see it this weekend versus SMU. He's going to whoop their ass. And honestly, I probably will use that as the foundation of his updated grade for when we do the deep dive, because I'm going to be very, very attentive to that game. But let's talk about Ohio State. It's only 2 lines because, again, I already have rewatched him, and I wanted to simply just make sure everything was in order. So he's pretty stiff for what I'd expect overall. He's not very enforceable at all as a blocker. And I said, my good, I was just let down. I did not see much that was noteworthy. It's just, he's 6 foot 230, man. I mean, he's a big back. He's heavy. Like, he's just more so. It's an interesting guy. I just didn't get very excited about him. Like, this is probably the one that will have the least amount of explanation, but I just personally wasn't a big fan of him. Donovan Edwards is next, and we'll talk about his game versus Indiana. He definitely had an off year this year, but I still think he's better than the consensus. Like, people still have some faith in him, but a lot of people have written him off as being absolute butt cheeks. This guy still belongs on a roster, maybe a practice squad, but a high-end practice squad guy. Shout out to the sponsor of the show, Olipop, for keeping me alive during these videos. But let's talk about his game versus Indiana. He ended up getting swallowed up by Mikhail Kamara out the gate. And I ended up putting pause on that, so there we go. I even caught myself on that one. But yeah, Mikhail Kamara I ended up posting on my X page, where if you guys want to see all 22 clips that represent these games I'm talking about, I do put him over there. He does not have great leg drive the way I would want for him, especially at 210. He has been okay as a blocker. He's getting contacted before the line of scrimmage on most reps. I feel bad for the guy. He does a nice job exploding through adequate holes at the line of scrimmage. Vision is his best attribute. Balance is solid. Explosiveness is as well. He's a little stiffer than expected and not a big long speed guy to the point where he flies. So, I mean, that's the thing. He used to be a home run hitter because I had him at like a B+ at the start of the year. So Donovan Edwards, bottom line, I mean, dude's just he's a solid back, but he's going to be more so of that one cut kind of dude rather than someone that you're going to want to use on a multitude of carries. Now we got Mario Anderson Jr. I got to see this guy in person, and I'm forgetting who it was. It might have been Clint on X, but Clint Gross. But he ended up bringing up Mario Anderson, and funny thing was, like, I was watching him that night, and I got to see him literally on Tuesday at the Frisco Bowl. Which funny thing, like, it's one of the weirdest events I went to for media because they allowed me to go on the field. Like, usually you have to get special permission to go on the field if you're media credentialed. But it was almost like, hey, we don't have room for you in the press box, so you can go on the field. I'm like, I would have done that in the first place. Hell yeah. And they gave you like this cool little goodie box. That's beside the point. If you guys want to see everything I got in the goodie bag, let me know. I mean, I don't know. It's not that exciting, but they could give me like a pair of socks and shit. That's kind of cool. But regardless, I got to see Mario Anderson in person. This dude ate up, had over 70 yards and a touchdown, and did a really, really good job. He also was like hanging out with a bunch of kids and stuff too, like allowing him to wear his helmet and stuff. I thought that was really cool. He looked like a really nice guy. But at the time of this, Navy was the only All-22 game for him, but it's still a game where I thought Navy performed very well, very underratedly on defense, and so I actually thought it was very translatable. So it's a good thing for us to talk about here. He had nice acceleration up the middle. He bounced outside to a bunch of defenders. Good vision past the line of scrimmage. I have yet to see something not manufactured up to it, though. So basically, he's best at creating after the line of scrimmage rather than actually going up to. So you'll see those backs that end up, essentially slicing and dicing at the line of scrimmage. Not really going to be Mario Anderson, but the moment he breaks through the line of scrimmage, I think his vision is definitely an asset. His top speed appears to be a bit capped. He has a tendency to bounce outside, pretty solid pass blocker, good leg drive, elects to truck defenders over evade them, which sounds fun and all, but when in a one-on-one, I prefer for him to evade them because he does not actually end up trucking and shedding contact. He more so just runs through them and falls for an extra yard. He ended up having a good long gain, but he definitely displayed the lack of top speed, and he ended up also hurdling a guy. That big long gain is also on my X page. But Mario Anderson has not fumbled a single time in college. That's super duper awesome. And again, at 5'9", 208, he has a great center of gravity. I would love this guy as a goal line back. I mean, he's just a hard hitter, and I love that. I really want him to be able to now transition it to, I lower my shoulder and I pop you to the point where you don't get your hands on me. But I do see that as a potential future for him, but dude, the long speed is certainly an issue. I'm seeing guys catching up to him easy to where he flies through the hole and most running backs can take it to the house and he cannot, which is why he ended up probably being primarily the goal line back there for Memphis. But let's talk about Olly Gordon next. He's getting some love from guys like Brett Coleman, and of course Brett has not gotten into the running back class the way that we have here. And Olly Gordon had a pretty poor year this year. He also ended up having, he ended up declaring. I don't know why. I mean, I would have went back, transferred, and, allowed some school that's having like a top running back come out, just be like, yo, I would go to UNC. I mean, freaking Omarion Hampton's coming out. Let's have Olly Gordon go to UNC Bill, or Chapel Bill, I say. But regardless, talk about his game versus Baylor, because a lot of running backs ended up having their worst games versus Baylor. And after the Texas Bowl on December 31st, he's already agreed to it, but y'all know these prospects can agree, but don't always come on. But we should be bringing on Keaton Thomas, a linebacker out of Baylor, who I actually saw as someone who popped off to me. Like, he did a really good job. Hopefully we can have him on the show. But let's talk about his performance versus Baylor. Out the gate, he had an ineffective spin move. He called that for a pass when he was completely covered. So I remember, I think it was just like a wheel route or something near the red zone. But he essentially was running and called for the pass, but the dude had no chance of getting open. So it's like, brother, like, have some awareness of your situation. You're not going to be Randy Moss. He has a heavy plant leg before he cuts hard. So, basically when he's trying to make a cut, it's just like this. And then that is just so slow, man, which is why his agility is so low. He plants on that plant leg so hard before doing any minute change. And he ended up doing a good job bouncing the ball outside for a big gain. He had a fumble on second contact, a touchdown with his leg drive. He's doing a good job with his contact balance overall. He got hurt on a shitty cut in the pass game, though. So, bottom line, I think that Olly Gordon is like right in the middle of where I think he should be rated. Like, I think he's actually properly rated from the consensus, but there's a lot of very vocal people who think this guy's absolute cheeks. And there's also people who like to overrate him, who haven't really studied the class and don't get to see that comparative balance. But Olly Gordon is going to be similar to that Derrick Henry mold, that Braylon Allen mold, which I could have put as a comparison. But, I would probably think about that a little bit more. Maybe next time we could talk about it. But somebody who can see where they're going, like knows what's up, but maybe doesn't have the ability to explode and change directions the way that you kind of need to if you are going to utilize your vision properly outside of maybe on outside zone where, the offensive line, like the holes are moving with you. So Olly Gordon certainly has a future in the NFL. I think that he's taken a big step back for sure, but I do think that there is a really good role for him as that home run hitter, and I'm excited to see him get to that point. But KRON Allen is next. I mean, this dude, talking about slow. We'll talk about his game versus Ohio State, also a relatively shorter one since KRON was pretty heavily studied the last year. Came into the year, I actually loved him to death. Primarily the things that ended up dropping were long speed and acceleration, because I just realized that, it's not just the fact that Kenneth Grant's an absolute freak of nature that he got caught from behind. It's also because KRON Allen's slow. So I think we got to be real there. But starting out, let's talk about this versus Ohio State. He's instantly dealing with pressure off the bat. He ended up having a good stiff arm. He's not overly athletic. That ended up being the case. He ended up, he benched Burke in run blocking. So yeah, he ended up just like bench pressing Denzel Burke. I love that. And I said, my God, this guy is slow. Overall, extremely underwhelming, but good vision and a bit overly patient at points. I honestly thought that he does like literally current Zeke is the perfect example of this. Someone who is going to just pretty much bounce like a bowling ball, knows where to go, but doesn't really have the athleticism to get there. I don't know if that's going to be something that we really need to factor in, but he certainly does have some issues and some limitations, but also has some very good positives. I mean, the dude just knows where to go at the right time, and I do love that about him. Then we got RJ Harvey next. Let's talk about his game versus Florida. I do love this guy to death. I really do. This is a good player. I started out the game by saying, ooh, great vision on a patient run going to the opposite side of the offensive line. He's not overly smooth. And I said, wow, great vision and explosiveness. His next level vision is a big wow. I will say I want him to commit quicker when the play is completely fucked to minimize damage. So basically when the play messes up and it's just like, rather than, hey, let's try to make a big gain out of this, like damage control is not really RJ Harvey's thing. I'll just say that. The defensive back blew past him in pass protection. Oof. He did not. Another defender slipped past him while he was in pass blocking as well. He's standing completely still rather than helping out offensive linemen in pass protection. I did not like him in pass protection. The next line said, he's low-key useless in pass protection. Not going to lie, the explosiveness and vision are the primary positives, but they are massive positives as well. I mean, this dude, like, he knows where to go and he explodes through the hole. I don't really think that he's somebody who's going to be a track star, but this is the definition of a one cut back. He sees exactly where to go. He can stop on a dime and he explodes. And I love that for him. But again, similar to, he has, I believe, that 1 per 100 fumble ratio, which, I mean, again, that's where I start having some concerns. But I absolutely adore RJ Harvey as that one cut back. And I'm talking about that Warren. I keep wanting to say Tyler Warren. And just for some reason, the names escape me. But, Warren easily could be replaced on the Steelers with this dude. Like, this is just the definition of a one cut back. And I love that for him. Now let's talk about Jaden Blue here. I mean, this dude graded out so well in so many categories. And I think he should go back to school. Apparently, he's ended up saying he wants to get to the league as soon as possible. I don't know why. I mean, there's a lot of NIL money, and he did not have a ton of touches, but I thought I might as well grade him because I started becoming a fanboy of him as the season went on. Let's talk about his game versus Arkansas, because it was one of the ones where he had the most number of touches. So I said he's definitely returning with a limited number of touches. That's before I did my research. He's not the starter. I bet he transfers. Solid vision on his first carry. Good patience while he's watching the play develop. He's not overly bursty for how athletic he is. I don't know if it's just me, but he feels a bit stiff. He's not super bursty either. Solid in pass protection so far. There was a pull block that failed, leading to a minimal gain, but it was not his fault. He failed to bounce out because Golden could not hold his block. To be honest, he's a very good back. He did end up having a fumble on a breakaway run. He's giving me Kamara from Wish vibes. So, I mean, I feel like that's pretty fair. Someone who's a little bit just a primary athlete, who's a good receiver, who's smart. Like, Jaden Blue is honestly somebody who I think deserves another year in college to truly prove himself. And the dude has way too many fumbles. I mean, I think he had like 100-something touches this year with like 3 fumbles. And it's just like, no, brother. But yeah, the ratio is way too high. just somebody who needs to learn how to handle contact, because he didn't have a pretty fumble either. It wasn't one where it was like, oh man, the defender did a great job. Like we were talking about Olly Gordon. Like that was a solid, acceptable fumble. And Jaden Blue has some that's like, you could do better than that. This is going to surprise a lot of people. This is Caleb Johnson at number 11. I was really hoping to love this guy. I love Iowa players. And also, that's one of the highest res images that I do have. So I would absolutely adore being able to put a ton of love for Caleb Johnson. Let's talk about his game versus Ohio State. He had limited touches, but it was versus great competition. He had a solid cut under the first down. His interior offensive line has not helped him out at all so far. Vision has been solid given the poor offensive line performance. He's not super athletic so far, but he has yet to have a chance to display it. Spoiler alert, he's a solid athlete. There's nothing crazy there, but he's a good athlete. Excuse me. I would have liked for him to chip a defender before releasing on his route. I would like for him to bounce. He hits the hole, excuse me. He hits the hole that he's supposed to, but I've yet to really see a ton of creativity. He has good patience on a jet sweep to allow a blocker to engage before bouncing outside. He's not super explosive, but he does have solid speed, which ended up just pretty much being equal for both of them. But regardless, back to the notes. He has not been an asset as a blocker so far. You think that's when you see why there's an F there. This allows to give you some context there. I've yet to see him really break a legitimate tackle. This poor guy does not really have a chance to show anything. Finally, there was a good shed of a tackle for a big gain. His top speed is showing as a little bit more limited than expected and ended off with a touchdown run. So I ended up actually, we'll toss in the Iowa State game. Why not? Let's do it. So I would like better overall contact balance for him. The touchdown was pretty much untouched. He ran straight into the back of a tight end instead of bouncing to the outside. He had a sad excuse for a slant route. Absolutely missed a pass block. And then he thrives in outside zone concepts. So for outside zones, I mean, you could toss in those teams in here as well. Definitely could be a good spot for him to go. So far, he has felt very Olly Gordon-esque, with most good runs coming on outside zone. Shown better balance in this game than he did versus Ohio State. So, I mean, bottom line, this guy knows where he's going. He's a solid athlete. I mean, he's super young with a ton of tread left on the tires. I could have given him a bump in the grade, but regardless, good running back overall. People try to act like this guy's on the level of Hampton and Genty. I'm just going to be real. I don't think that the tape matches it, but he did a great job this year. He really did carry Iowa on his back and does deserve a lot of credit for that. Now let's talk about Brashard Smith, SMU running back. I love Brashard Smith. Ended up seeing him in person like almost every single game this year. And this dude's the primary reason, in my opinion, the SMU offense was so efficient, why Kevin Jennings was allowed to develop, because he could rely on his run game. So some drinking ASMR in there for you for free. Let's get into this game versus Clemson, which broke my heart, but, we ball. The offensive line is not doing him any help out the gate. He had a meh in route and a meh out route, so receiving-wise has not really done too good of a job. He can try to fake, he can try to fake no one rather than just cutting and going through an open hole. He tries to get all cute and, hesitate and shit before making a cut. Sometimes, lose the style points and just be a little more decisive. I think that's what I was trying to get at with that point. He had a good spin move. He had a really awful drop on an open out route. He can jump out of a clean cut and second guess himself. So that's what I'm talking about. He gets a little cute rather than just being purely decisive. Sometimes you just gotta commit to it. He cuts later than expected. If he cut earlier, he could hit the hole harder and faster. Oh, you could say pause to that. I would like for him to go north-south more than east-west when the play breaks down to get as many yards as possible on broken plays. Remember what I was talking about with, I think it was RJ Harvey or something. Basically minimize the negative damage. Just don't try to get a big play. Do some damage control. Brashard has some issues with that as well. So far, he's been the best in outside zone, which I guess, to be fair, outside zone concepts are so beneficial to running backs, especially in college, because it requires the defense to do, for everyone to do their job, because if one guy fails, there's going to be a massive hole that's right there, so it does make it a lot easier for running backs to choose. But regardless, he has nice micro bursts, so small bursts of acceleration that pretty much ends up messing up defenders' angles and stuff too, which is a massive plus. One great run that showed explosiveness, but inconsistent vision as he ran right at the closing defender rather than an angle for the most yards. I think I ended up posting this on my Twitter as well. Like, he got into open field, and this is the funny thing between him and Amari and Hampton. There was a similar play where there was a safety coming down at him. Amarian adjusted to be able to deal with the incoming safety. Rashard was like, fuck it, I'm going right at him. And it's like, no, don't do that. Like, you can evade the guy. You don't need to go right at him. And so I was hoping that he did that, but, ended up, going straight for the dude. I don't know if the top speed is insane, but it's not an issue. Not a very enforceful blocker, but has not seemed to be a liability. Receiving touchdown, not another drop. His vision has improved once his jitters wore off. I would say I'm a bit let down on the missed tackle forceability. Overall, he belongs in the NFL. The flashes are worth it. And I think that's super key for Rashard Smith. I mean, he is just, the biggest issue was decisiveness. And yeah, it was in a playoff game, so I'm sure that the nerves were higher and because all the eyes were on him as well. But this dude's been awesome this entire year. He deserves to be in the same category as the Caleb Johnsons of the world because he too has carried this team on his back. Now we're going to talk about Tosh Brooks. I love this guy, but he has like 1 billion carries, which hence the negative it factor. But when I was talking about Baylor, given like some of the worst games, well, we're going to talk about Tosh versus Baylor as well. He ended up getting toppled by a defender that I don't think should have tackled him. So you already see the issues with the contact balance out the gate. He did some bullshit fake, like he didn't see the defender. Then he tried a late juke and failed. So the defender came off clean off the edge, and then he just pretended like he didn't see them to try to like surprise react him. It did not work. I mean, it's just like a fat guy with a beard. It's like, we know the double chin's under there. You're not fooling anyone. Just like the defender knew you knew it was coming. Like, let's just be real here. But getting back to it. He had a solid bounce out that he ended up being face mask on. I said he is twitchy. Ended up hurdling a dude as well. He definitely has the it factor when it comes to smoothness of movement, especially at his size. His vision is iffy, but the explosiveness is awesome. He can be overly patient at points. Contact balance is super inconsistent. Poor pass block. He ended up allowing a sack. Surprised he doesn't have more missed tackles forced and balance with his weight and height and explosiveness. I thought his center of gravity should be improved. He bounced outside for a touchdown. When no obvious defender is there to block, he ends up freezing. Funnily enough, his run blocking is actually good. Honestly, has been a solid receiver overall. When he has when he's able to handle an inside blitzer and pass protection, he can do it well. Ended up being subbed out as well, but it's just so weird because this guy just explodes, and it's an amazing athlete at 230. So I could totally see him working in a plethora of systems. Now let's go to Trevor Etienne. A little bit shorter notes here because I was updating him. Let's talk about the game versus Alabama because I know he's been dealing with some injuries. Don't want to grade him like when he's pretty much doing the team a favor by playing. First touch is a reception with a missed tackle for a spin. He saw a hole opening up, but did not laterally move enough to get there. If he broke a relatively weak tackle, it could have been housed. So he ended up not breaking the tackle. He's doing okay on certain routes. Overall, he's a solid back, definitely underrated, but not an RB1 the way he looked when he was at Florida. I mean, this dude's just very underrated. He's not going to be a pass protector by any stretch of the imagination. He's a shitty blocker, which sucks because at 205, you think that you could potentially do that. He's going to be a home run hitting threat who's also a one-cut back. That has value in the NFL. And I do not think he's going top 40. Spoiler alert, that's bad on me. You guys know how I make one mistake in episode. I do think he goes in the top 150. Now let's talk about Trey Henderson here at number 7. I do have a pretty strong feeling that Quinn Sean's better. But I will also say that I tried to watch games after the offensive line got buns, but also a lot of games before. So keep that in mind as well. And let's talk about the game versus Iowa. I want to talk about Michigan, but I literally talked about how horrible the offensive line was. Wasn't a very good display of his abilities. So versus Iowa, I said I need to see what this dude does when he has a functional offensive line. He trucked the safety. I said I liked a certain rep a lot, but then I ended up seeing that it was Quinshon Judkins who ran it. I said, Will Howard's been absolutely ass. Solid navigating on outside zone. I would like for him to bounce outside more, and his vision overall is inconsistent. This is another player that has almost no fumbles on his entire career, but this is the definition of very well balanced. He's smart. He's a good athlete. He's reliable. He's able to be a third down back. This guy is a definition of 3-down back, and I'd be extremely happy to have him on any team, but 3-down backs are not necessarily super valuable in the NFL anymore because there is such a heavy rotation. But luckily, if you do have a vacancy and don't want to fill it with a bunch of dudes, Trey Henderson's your guy. Now let's talk about Devin Neal here. Also, we're going to talk about his game versus Baylor, almost into that starting category. And he took a jump because he actually was pretty high, and then he ended up dropping and ended up coming back up. But versus Baylor, he's not overly explosive, but he has solid vision. He had 2 nice juke moves. Good vision on an outside zone for a big gain. Touchdown run on an outside zone. Great blocking IQ. Improved fluidity as the game went on. Great blocking overall. Nice out route, slips arm tackles, and then I ended up talking about the Baylor linebacker flashing. And we'll talk about the Kansas State game as well since the notes are short. He had a nice out route versus a linebacker. He does a nice job throwing off poor tacklers. He has good downfield vision, adjusted a route for a particular play. So as the play broke down, he ended up adjusting it to help out his quarterback. Good vision on outside zone. Overall solid running back. And I think that's the definition of it. Devin Neal is more of a guy who can punish you when you don't have good tackling form, but I don't think he'd punish you if you did your job. But this guy's been the definition of consistency as well. Also somebody who does not fumble at all. And I got to see him in person. The dude was awesome. That Baylor game I got to see, so I'm super excited to see him in the NFL. Quinshawn's next. I mean, this is going to be a really good group at the top here, but let's talk about his game actually versus Indiana. And remember, these are games where the offensive line sucks, and this guy still is grading out very well. And this is like OG Ezekiel Elliott. That's what I think of Quinshawn here. But versus Indiana, I don't truly feel that his balance is as good as it was, which I had him A plus. So keep that in mind. Not seeing the leg drive at the rate that he had, but it's still very solid. He's been inconsistent as a blocker. Nice job juking a defensive interior and making him whiff. He has a very powerful stiff arm. I swear he is getting way higher yards per carry than the stats say. Indiana is using damn good defense and is mismatching Ohio State at the line of scrimmage. He can over-hesitate before making a move. Overall, I don't think he's had that bad of a season at all, and he should still return to be a round 1 back in 2026, but I don't think we'll see anything later than 75 in 2025. So, I mean, I think this guy proved even with the bad offensive line, he was still productive. He has the ability to make you miss if you're not using proper form. And he's just a reliable back, man. I really do love him to death. So I really do hope he goes to a team that can use him properly. Now let's go down to Jordan James. This guy surprised me a lot. This guy's a really fun one. Also another player who does not fumble. But let's talk about his game versus Michigan, which was very recent. Good balance so far. Even he drove even a defensive interior for more yards. Solid cutback. The offensive lineman failed up front. He bounced too far outside. He accepts a lost rep and rams for more yards, and I said that's something I love. Insanely explosive with great change of direction. I wish he had a little bit more patience with blocks developing because he seems to go full throttle out the gate. He ended up getting trucked by Mason Graham. Once he does show patience, he had a big run. Woot woot. He seems to lose his balance post making a move sometimes because he cuts too hard. This guy would be lethal with more efficient blocking. So I'm super excited for what he's going to bring to the table. Kind of just basically an upgraded version of RJ Harvey, low-key. And that's going to be something that's super awesome. This guy's been extremely reliable. I don't know if he ends up going in the first 2 rounds, but I don't think this guy escapes day 2. This guy's been great. Then we got Cam Skattebo next, the GOAT. I love Cam Skattebo. This is someone who I straight up wrote off. And, let's talk about his game versus Utah because everybody knows about his game versus Iowa State. He hits the hole hard. He ends up actually starting out the game with a great block as well. He ran into the back of his offensive line rather than hitting a hole correctly. He fights for extra yards, could improve on ankle tackle breaks. Surprisingly, that was the thing that got him the most were ankle tackles. But he takes the majority of contact well. It's just sometimes I guess his ankles just click together or something. I'm not sure, but I feel like it's something that can improve based on his balance for other tackles. He can end up kamikazeing, which if you guys understand what I mean when I say kamikaze, it's just you put the blinders on and just go, like Frank Gore said, fuck it, I'm hitting the hole every single time, regardless of what's best. He can do that sometimes as well. Sam Levitt's popping off as a passer, so there you go. Shout out to Sam. Sometimes chooses the path of most resistance, and then the next play he'll flash great vision. He's surprisingly smooth. The biggest blunder is how he does not break ankle tackles at a higher rate given his contact balance. He ended up having a beastquake run in that game as well. Sometimes needs to accept a bad play rather than a home run hunt. Low-key Charbonnet comp. Nice adjustment to an off throw. Nice job on a home run hit up the middle. So I set up the gut. So Zach Charbonnet is a former high school teammate of mine. So I got to see a lot of this guy in person. And apart from the fumbling, because Zach's very, very, very reliable. So if Zach fumbled more, that would be like what Cam Scatabo is to me. Just somebody who has that beautiful blend of, being able to be reliable as someone who can catch a ball, but someone who has that home run hitting ability, who is smart, who's able to take a ton of contact balance, who has a variety of moves to make people miss, and is a good blocker as well, has a great frame. I think Zach was like 6 foot, 215 coming out of high school. So I got to know him like as a similar to Cam Scatabo build. I don't think that Cam is the athlete that some people think he is, but you have to be a good enough athlete to be a home run hitter. And I think that he gets the respect he deserves. People all love him, but I don't think people give him the necessarily draft credit that he deserves. And this dude's going to be an absolute beast. I would love to see him on my Steelers, but also you talk about how hard he runs Pacheco as well. But he does have a fumbling problem. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 2 or 3 per 100, which is a little bit of a scary one. But we have a big jump here. I mean, look at the score. Almost a 9-point jump to Amari and Hampton, which, spoiler alert, it's the same grade as number 1. So we kind of have 1A and 1B here. But let's talk about his game versus NC State. One of the most recent games, one of his best games as well. He starts off by showing solid athleticism. I'm seeing it off the bat, and I'm seeing it now more than last year by a mile. Remember, this is a guy who I had like way down my list. So this guy took a massive step up this year. Nice outside zone run that was broken for a big gain. He showed solid vision and smoothness with burst in a slightly capped speed. That ended up kind of being disproven, but let's get on with it. The offensive line has fallen apart. Very good, solid run block, funnily enough, on a jet sweep, has not shown too much as a pass blocker. He did okay, he did a solid job protecting against a blitzing cornerback. Great job navigating a messy pull block. Showing very nice contact balance. Where was this dude last year? Great shed of a light tackle and ended up pushing for more yards. Wow, great patience and burst with vision. This player is taking a huge step. Remember, I came into this thinking this guy's just going to be like one of the guys I hate. So, this is something where I came with a negative bias, and this dude is like popping off. He made a negative play into a positive with a great leg drive and balance. I ended up actually saying and posting this on X, and I was like, dude, like, how is this not a negative play? Like, this is crazy. He has the best contact balance in the class, ? Definitely top 2. Genty is hard to compete with, but goddamn. He just popped a defensive back on a blitz. This is not even bad defense. It's just damn good play from Hampton. Such a smooth and fluid mover, giving Le'Veon Bell vibes. So I ended up almost comping him to Le'Veon Bell. Great tightrope, unreal downfield vision. He's built to be a touchdown machine. Would not be surprised to see him go in the top 15. He did end up having a drop in the receiving game. Could be the best running back I have studied, which is mind-blowing based on my opinion of him at the start of the season. Well done. So, obviously, I don't think I need to say anything else there. This dude has done such a phenomenal job. And I'm so excited for him. If my Steelers take him in the first round, I'd be pretty happy. But, there you go. There you go. Same grade as Ashton Genty, which, it's not that Ashton Genty is the same grade as Amari and Hampton. It's the fact that Amari and Hampton reached Ashton Genty level and just is not getting that credit. And again, I'm a hater, so just saying. So versus Oregon, let's talk about Genty's play versus them. I also watched his game I have a lot of notes, versus Washington State, but Oregon was another good game as well. Excellent vision as always. Increased athleticism this year compared to last. Nice pass block. Solid response to instant pressure. He did trip over himself, but seems to be a one-off situation due to his good balance. So far, he is a non-factor as a receiver, manipulates defenders by faking hold choices. So he ends up looking like he's going to be cutting into a hole and ends up bouncing it to the one that he wants. He does micro cuts to adjust with acceleration, which I do love as well. It's kind of like the defensive angle breakers that I love. Not ankle, but pursuit angle. I'm choking to death here. It's okay. But he does try to bounce outside a lot. He can be Marshawn Lynch-esque when it comes to a chain miss tackle forced. He does not have the innate ability to push for the extra yard in engagements, which that's not necessarily true, but I did see it at a lower rate this year than I did last. I thought he used power a lot better last year than he did this, but also I think that's why he fumbled so much, because when you're trying to truck through people, I think he took attention off the ball. But regardless, he could learn to use better leverage when engaging in powerful situations. He's exponentially decreased his efficiency as a blocker. I would say he is far less effective on the non-explosive plays than I expected, but still is a very, very good back with elite potential. He sheds contact well. I just want him to handle proper form better than he is. Overall, I'm impressed by his highlight level home runs and overall vision. He does get a lack of criticism for his lack of ability to shed quality tackles and NFL level hit power, but if a defense is caught lacking, this guy will have a Derrick Henry level impact when it comes to big play potential. The comp is a mix between Devin Singletary and Travis Etienne back when Travis was actually good. But you know what? Let's just read the Washington State one. Well, let's give you guys a little bit of a long ending to this video with a lot of fun. He just slips tackles like it's nothing. My lord, what the fuck is this guy? I swear he is a demigod, just bouncing off tackles and darting through holes like it is nothing. Actually, a really solid wheel route. Casual. He ended up having just a casual hurdle. Altered his route to help the quarterback, not targeted. Very smooth mover. Hampton is a better vision, but contact balance king probably still goes Dash and Genty. Downfield vision is insane. A bit better at the than at the line of scrimmage. Just insane contact balance that sheds good and below level tackles. Unreal RB1 talent. So that's gonna be the video, man. You guys know how much I love doing these videos, and man, being able to have two guys that I absolutely adore just gets me excited. So super happy that we have that this year. We did not get that pleasure last year. So thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side.